We're about to open a case file that's 1,400 years old. But this isn't a story about some ancient king or a forgotten empire. Nope, this is a story about you. We're going to look at two really strange facts about your body that science only confirmed pretty recently. But here's the kicker. What if an ancient text described both of them with stunning accuracy centuries and centuries ago? Let's investigate. So that really gets to the heart of what we're looking at today. We always think of the ancient Greeks as the pioneers of science, right? But what if I told you that a text from 7th century Arabia might have described the human body even more accurately than they did? What if it held information so advanced that we could only prove it was true with modern tools like microscopes and fMRI brain scanners? All right, let's dive into our first case file. It starts at the very, very beginning of your life. And for this one, I need you to just forget everything you think you know about what an embryo looks like. We're going all the way back to day 24, when you were just a tiny speck, and your first fairy shape was, well, something else entirely. Okay, I know that sounds a little crazy, but just look at this. At this super early stage, a human embryo is a dead ringer for a leech. And what's really fascinating is that it's not just about the looks, it actually acts like one too. It clings to the wall of the uterus and literally draws nutrition from the mother's blood, just like a parasite. So the central clue in this whole mystery comes down to a single Arabic word from that ancient text. The word is Alaq. And the claim is that this one little word unlocks the whole puzzle. Because you see, Alaq doesn't just have one simple meaning. It has three. So let's just break this down. Meaning number one, a leech. Check. That perfectly describes the embryo's shape and its behavior. Meaning number two, a suspended thing. I mean, how incredible is that? It perfectly captures how the embryo literally hangs or is suspended in the womb. And then meaning number three, a blood clot, which describes its appearance. Think about that. One single word is giving us three incredibly precise biological descriptions. It's kind of wild. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some fringe theory. We're talking about Dr. Keith Moore here. He's one of the world's top embryologists. The guy literally wrote the textbook on the subject. And when he was shown this comparison, he was just stunned. He actually admitted he'd never noticed the resemblance himself. His conclusion as a top scientist, there is simply no way this kind of knowledge could have existed back in the 7th century. All right, so we've looked at where you physically came from. Now let's switch gears and talk about where your thoughts come from. Case file number 2 is all about a different part of you. The part that makes big decisions, the part that tells the truth, or, doesn't. So let me ask you a simple question. When you tell a lie, where does it start? Your first instinct is probably to point to your mouth, right? Makes sense. But that's just the delivery system. Where does the actual command to lie come from? Well, modern science has tracked it down to a surprisingly specific spot. And this is where that ancient text pops up again, with another claim that is, frankly, really weird. It talks about dealing with someone by grabbing their forelock, but then it says something so specific. It doesn't call the person a liar. It says the forelock itself is the liar, a lying, sinning forelock. I mean, how strange is that? Why on earth would you blame the forehead for telling a lie? For centuries, you'd just assume that phrase was a metaphor, right? A figure of speech. But today we have incredible technology like fMRI scans that let us watch the brain work in real time. And when we do that, we find that the address for deception is a very real place. And that address is the prefrontal cortex, which sits right there, directly behind your forehead. You can think of it as the CEO of your brain. It's in charge of planning, making moral choices, the whole right versus wrong department. And crucially, it's what initiates deception. This is the exact spot that lights up like a Christmas tree on a brain scan when someone tells a lie. So, a lying and sinning forelock? Turns out that's not a metaphor. It's a location. Okay, let's just take a step back for a second. We've got two pretty mind-blowing claims here. And I know what some of you are probably thinking. Couldn't this all just be a massive coincidence? Lucky guesses or a simple misinterpretation? That's a totally fair question. So let's play devil's advocate and weigh the evidence. Okay, let's start with the embryo. The skeptic's view would be, look, Alaq just means a blood clot. Anyone could have observed something like that. Fair enough. But the counter-argument is that Arabic already has a specific word for a blood clot, dam. The text didn't use that word. It chose Alaq, which carries all those other meanings, the leech shape, the suspension. Now for the brain. A skeptic would say grabbing the forelock is just an old-timey metaphor for the whole person. But the counter is, Why not mention the tongue? You know, the part of the body that actually does the talking? The text is so incredibly precise, blaming the forehead, the exact location of the brain's center, for intent and deception. So let's just quickly recap. We've looked at two case files. First, an ancient description of a human embryo that perfectly nails its leech-like shape, the way it's suspended, and its appearance. And second, a pinpoint identification of the brain's prefrontal cortex as the hub for lying and sinning. So the takeaway here isn't an answer. It's a question for you to think about. We've seen information that seems way too advanced for its time. Knowledge that just shouldn't have been possible without microscopes and brain scanners. So if it wasn't the science of the day, and if it wasn't just a wild coincidence, you have to ask yourself, what was the source of this information?